Can you imagine that in a Formula 1 race, the winner is a person riding a horse? But something similar is about to happen when the winner of the 2020 US elections are finally announced. Because in the age of internet and digitalization, the winner is probably going to be decided by snail mail. Yes, the United States Postal Service USPS, America's second oldest and 228-year-old institution, is being forced to gear up to handle the expected 100+ million mail-in ballots, the most in US history, that have already begun to pour in. Of the 250 million eligible American voters, 162 million plus will be eligible to receive their ballot in the mail. 12 states will automatically receive mailed ballots. In another 12 states, an excuse is required to ask for a mail-in ballot, but because of coronavirus, for this election, 5 states have waived the requirement. In 32 states plus DC, you have to request for a ballot. In 32 states, ballots must arrive by the date of the election. But in Pennsylvania, they can be received till 5 p.m. on the Friday after Election Day, that is till November 6th, Iowa till November 9th, and Michigan until November 17th. Normally, the winner is announced on election night itself, but this time it could be days or longer before the full picture emerges.
It's not going to be election day, it's going to be election week.
Trying to take a leaf out of the Republicans' playbook and not playing Mr. Nice Guy, Hillary Clinton, who lost to Trump last time around, advised Joe Biden,
Do not concede on election night, as postal ballots will take time to count.
which will be further complicated with more than 300 challenges in 44 states to voting-related rules winding through courts across the country. Older adults living in rural areas have for decades been using mail-in ballots to cast their votes. But this time, because of coronavirus, the figure is already much higher, as even city folks are not trudging to poll booths. 1 week before election day, a record number of votes had been cast, with Hawaii and Texas already surpassing its 2016 voter turnout, a large number through postal ballots. 47% of those supporting Biden said that they would vote by mail, as compared to just 11% of Trump supporters. That made it a tempting target for Trump as he attacked the entire ballot mail-in process.
Mail-in ballots lead to massive corruption and fraud. Foreign powers will forge ballots. Ballots are being sent to undocumented immigrants in California.
But the FBI refutes their president's claims.
It would be extraordinarily difficult to change a federal election outcome through this type of fraud alone.
Even Trump's own commission to probe this was disbanded in 2018 when it couldn't come up with any proof of election fraud.
At most, there are isolated incidents by both Democrats and Republicans.
However, elections are not won on the basis of facts, they are won in the mind, on the basis of perception. And in that, Trump seems to have successfully created doubts in people's minds.
59% of Americans are not confident in the honesty of the nation's elections.
Florida's Pasco County decided to shut down its office's Facebook and Twitter accounts.
I just got tired of the misinformation and the partisan bickering back and forth.
Astutely aware that mail-in ballots could be pivotal in this election, in May of 2020, Trump appointed his trusted man, DeJoy, as Postmaster General. A man who has contributed $1.1 million to Trump's campaign and held at least $30 million worth of stock in a company that contracts with USPS, a clear case of ethical violation. Democratic lawmakers pointed out this conflict of interest but had no say in his appointment.
Has deliberately enacted policies to sabotage the postal service to serve one person, President Trump.
Actually, Trump was an unwitting beneficiary of the bitter bipartisan divide in recent times. Just as Republicans had blocked Obama's appointee Merrick Garland as Supreme Court Justice, they also blocked Obama's appointees to the USPS's Board of Governors, so the Trump administration inherited an empty board, which they used to their advantage. Trump's appointee DeJoy quickly went about the job of reducing USPS's efficiency in the name of cost-cutting by restrictions on staff overtime, leading to a backlog of undeliverable mail, removing 671 mail sorting machines, reassigning or displacing 23 veteran postal executives, and banning additional daily trips beyond their initial run. Then in July, USPS sent warning letters to 159 million registered voters in 40 states, informing them that the Postal Service may not be able to process all mail-ins by election deadlines. leading to the fear that mail-ins may never be counted or simply lie uncollected or in the trash, just like it happened with at least 65,000 ballots during this year's June primaries. And though that represents just 1% of the total ballots of most states, the 2016 election was won by less than a 1% margin in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Another factor to be considered are the 3 million overseas and military voters who usually get their ballots 45 days before election day and will be required to send it from overseas by post. Funnily enough, for unrelated reasons 2 years back, Trump threatened to pull out of the 144-year-old Universal Postal Union that keeps letters and documents moving around the world. To ensure USPS could handle the election load, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi managed to secure for them $10 billion in emergency funding.
The vote on this bill is to protect USPS from bankruptcy.
Trump had previously blocked the Democrats' proposal for $75 billion for USPS. However, Trump alone is not responsible for USPS's sorry state of affairs. Emails destroyed USPS's business long before, and though e-commerce retailers use their services to deliver packages, volumes had halved in the past 20 years. When stores shuttered with COVID, first-class mail, its most profitable product, saw heavy declines. But it was a bipartisan bill in 2006, well before the Trump presidency, passed unanimously by the House and Senate, that truly sealed USPS's fate. The bill forced them to make health benefit provisions for employees who had not yet retired and invest those funds in government bonds that offered dismal returns, robbing USPS of more than $5 billion of income per year. Instead, they now have a debt of $11 billion. Trump just used the tools at his disposal, and in an interview with Fox Business on August 13th, openly admitted,
They need the money to handle mail-in voting. If we don't make that deal, they don't get the money.
Less than a week after Trump's interview,
The reform agenda has been postponed till after the elections.
it took an order from the Federal District Court in Manhattan to force DeJoy to act.
USPS must treat mail-in ballots as first class or priority mail and pre-approve all overtime from October 26th to November 6th.
Another federal court in Washington state blocked operational and policy changes made by the Postal Service that slowed mail delivery.
And amounts to voter disenfranchisement.
DeJoy apologized to the court for not consulting with state election officials and promised to
Deliver the nation's election mail on time.
Because mail-in voting can decide this election, Democrats will fight for every mail-in ballot to count, and Republicans will oppose every mail-in ballot that's sent in. Of course, these arguments will often be done under the guise of election security and fraud prevention, but are simply a power grab at all costs. Trump has already urged his supporters, typically the gun-carrying types,
Go to poll booths and make sure that there's no rigging.
5 battleground states have no laws prohibiting people from carrying guns into or near polling places, and only 6 states expressly prohibit it. 50,000 volunteers are expected to heed his call. It was precisely these tactics of voter intimidation that made monitoring plans by either party to be approved by a court compulsory since 1980. But this oversight has ended 2 years back. If 2016 showed how foreign operatives were exploiting social media to influence the US election, in 2020, Republicans themselves seem to be undermining their own democracy and that of America's most reliable organization, the United States Postal Service. Bisbo's limerick. The postal letter is having its moment of glory, but rumors and lies are muddling the story. Can the USPS perform in the eye of the storm and help fulfill a duty that is mandatory? Subscribe to Bisbo and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever Bisbo releases a new video. Sources of all our information is listed in the video description section.